Hello and welcome to Voices of BlueScope, the podcast where we go behind the scenes at BlueScope to meet the people who create strength every day. I'm your host, Martin Feld. Thank you for joining us. In this instalment, we're continuing a theme that we explored back in episode 34, sharing corporate knowledge. Internally at BlueScope during November 2024, and in line with International Men's Day and Movember, teams ran a campaign under the banner of MoMENtous, acknowledging and celebrating the experience of some of our longest-serving employees in Australia. What follows is 5 extended individual and group interviews from that initiative, which were facilitated by Craig Nealon and Tim Robinson from our corporate media team. Each discussion captures the personal narratives and corporate knowledge of our participants, preserving their experiences and legacies for their family and friends, along with current and future BlueScope employees alike. Of course, while we encourage you to listen to all of the included stories, don't forget that you can use the chapter navigation in your browser or podcast app to jump between interviews. Let's cross to our first recording, which is a discussion between Craig and Mike McDonagh, who has been with our business since he started at Lysart in 1970.
So Mike, can you tell us what your current role is and what you do sort of day to day?
Current role is I've been seconded onto a project for BBC, and it's called LIFT, L-Y-F-T. It's a new D365 dynamic system they're putting into the building components business, and I'm on secondment to mainly work in the coil purchasing area, which is Lysart and Fielder's business coming together and having all the one system.
All right, so to be asked to go on a project like this, you've obviously got some experience, and so what's your background then?
Background is I started at Lysart, John Lysart, Newcastle, 1970, apprentice fitter and machinist. I served my apprenticeship there, went tool making for 3 or 4 years, which included 3 years in New Guinea, back to Newcastle, which was Sankey division then. Then I came down as a supervisor down to Lysart in Chullora. And in 1988, they asked me to look at coil control because they couldn't get anyone really to do it. Well, they had a few people and they kept coming and going. So I started to do the coil ordering for New South Wales. And then I've done that ever since, but we've rolled it out nationally now. So it's a national group run in Sydney that do all the coil ordering for both Lysart and Fielders.
So what was Lysart like in Newcastle at that time, 1970? What did they have there?
1970, I was only asked that question this morning. Yeah. They did have, I started in the engineering, they had a heavy engineering shop, which in fact made the bridging supports for the new Hawkesbury Road, the road that goes over the Hawkesbury River. That was all done at Lysart. They had massive machinery like lathes, milling machines. They were all imported from Europe, a lot of money tied up, and they did a lot of big engineering jobs.
Okay, so you didn't have rolling mills?
No, there was a couple of rolling mills in one shop, but not really. They had the expander metal business, which now started there. And of all places, they also made silos, and we also had them off-site up in Rutherford because we didn't have the room to store them. So silos, and also purlins, which were made out of black steel, and we painted them on site and made the original fabrication homes, the mobile homes you see today, were made there in the 70s.
Oh, interesting. So this is totally different stuff than what the company does now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What about Sankey? What was Sankey?
Sankey were an electrical lamination business, stamping business. I spent 8 years there in total because I had to do my apprenticeship, the tool making side of things, which took 3 years. And in the third year, they sent me to New Guinea for 3 years because I was setting up a plant up there. Lysart was there, but next door they put in a sheet metal shop, which stamped out electric light fittings and wheelbarrows and garbage bins and you name it, and we made it. So, but Sankey was a big electrical business. They made stampings made the motors. until it all came out of Japan and Taiwan all after that. But they had about 30 presses, massive 300-ton presses that stamped and we slid our own coil. So all the coil come up from Port Kembla, the electrical coil. We slid our own into slits, recoiled, and then pushed through the machines. Yep.
So I can remember the decarb line at CRM, right?
Yes, yeah. And
which no longer exists, but I can remember that. And when I was there, I would hear Sankey all the time. Oh, well, this is for Sankey. And
well, it was a very thin material and very high tech and very hard to slit. Probably 1200 wide coil came up, and then they pushed it through the slit lines,
yep.
which I've worked on for a while. You had to do your time on the slitting lines as well. In those days, you had to go at everything. Maintenance, all sorts of stuff you done. Yep. But Sankey was a massive operation, 3 shifts, 7 days a week, just making steel laminations. They also made the Clip Lock 406 clips. That was another big venture, and they made a lot of those as well. And the tool room at that time was the best in the Southern Hemisphere, they said. Best equipped. A lot of beautiful equipment for making the actual tooling. For the
so that operation no longer exists? It's not?
No. I don't know. It kept going for a while, and then I don't know what happened to it after that, really. The buildings are all still there, of course, in Newcastle there.
So that brings you to how many years have you been now with the company, or the same company?
It'll be 55 years on the 14th of January 2025.
And you think, or we think maybe, that's possibly the longest serving employee?
I'm led to believe that I am the longest serving employee in the business.
Given all this wealth of experience you clearly have, is there something about you that you're the go-to person for? Like, do people lean on you for certain advice, or they come to you for something?
They do in the coil side of it, certainly, and still do, even though I'm out of it a bit. I'm still getting some calls, but we've got it in our system. I developed a lot of documents, so it's a lot easier for people coming in to try and pick up coil ordering. It is a bit unique, but you do need some experience in the steel business, really. 88 we started, but I've seen 4 systems since then come through. But yeah, it's the knowledge you pick up. But I learned a lot of knowledge working in Sankey, then went up to New Guinea, which was all stamping, and so you do pick up a lot of stuff about steel, which, you come in off the street, you're not really going to, you talk thicknesses, colours, hardness. It's hard to pick up.
Okay, so lots have changed between now and then, obviously, but what are some things that stand out for you that's changed over the years?
Well, the products have definitely changed. I mean, when I first came down to Sydney from Newcastle, Lysart in Chullora only made, for instance, 6 colours. You remember those days? And it was certain colours, certain days. They didn't make no such thing as 0.42 material. It was all 0.48. The range of products now in both fielders and the Lysart business has just grown something you would not believe, and they're still growing. Every week there seems to be a new product coming out. So and the colour range, of course. I mean, 6 now to probably 66 when you compare the ultra metallic stainless steel. So that's a big change, the products. And one thing that has always kept in mind, safety. People don't believe me, in 1970, when we worked in the press, 73 when we went to Sankey, they were wearing earmuffs, hats, glasses, gloves. People wouldn't believe we were wearing earmuffs in early 70s.
So I started 79, but I could tell you at Spring Hill CRM, people weren't wearing helmets, gloves, weren't a compulsory thing. Hearing protection was, so it was loud. But
hearing protection, eye protection, because
eye protection we didn't have.
Yeah, but in the tool room where we worked, you got a warning if you weren't wearing it, because there was that much metal, shavings and stuff. You had to wear them.
Yeah. So what's kept you here up all this time? What's the draw card? Why do you get up in the morning and want to come to work? What makes you do that?
The company over the years has been great to me as a starter, but it's not only that, it's the people. I'll just give you an example. I was talking to Philomena this morning, working with me. We're organising a luncheon on the 14th of December And we do this, every, say, 6 months, and we get people who have left their company some 15 years ago, and we all get together and have a bit of a lunch. We're trying to pick somewhere around the rocks this time in December, but that's something that I've kept in contact with people in Perth, and mainly Perth and Sydney. They've worked, some have gone 20 years. And also in America, I had a lot of connections in America when I travelled to America, and I still keep in contact with guys that did work there, retired now, and one guy still works at Tacoma as a sales rep. So it's the people as well.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah.
Like lifelong friends from when I first started. Yeah. But career highlights, is there something that stands out, and is there something that you're particularly proud of?
Well, I think there'd be two things. Other than the early career when you're only an apprentice, going to New Guinea was a big thing when you were 20, 21. In those days, it was sort of ended up there during independence. It was a bit of an unknown thing. But the two things that stand out are really turning the coil control into a national role, whereas it was state-based. And you can imagine we had thousands of tonnes at Port Kembla, Heggie store in Port Kembla, Western Port. We don't have any of that now. And so to move that into a national role, the stock turns were about 3 or 4 for New South Wales. Now they're 10 or 11. So that's sort of probably the biggest achievement. But also in the late 80s, early 90s, we did roll out the first MTS system, which was materials tracking system, which was the first time we had PC, they'll dumb terminals and keyboards and printers on all the roll formers in Australia. That was another achievement as well for early. Then the barcoding, we introduced barcoding in that round about that time. And in fact, I went to, when I was in America, I did a presentation in Rancho Cucamonga at the paint line there because they were trying to introduce barcode scanning, and we'd already had it for stock takes. So that was another achievement as well. But I think that getting coil from a role that there was probably 6 people in each state down to about 4 of us, was a big, and there's a lot more control, of course. And of course, this latest role, they don't sort of ask people at 70 to start going on a new project. Not many companies would be doing that, and I wouldn't have thought. And of course, I've got the knowledge. I think they know that you carry the job through too. I was surprised when they said, I've turned 70, I'm going to 71. And Damon Collins and the guys asked me to give them a hand on this. So that's something that you'd think most guys want to retire at this stage. But there's still a few years yet to go.
So, Mike, I actually have really appreciated the conversation because I was just thinking it's brought back a lot of memories for myself. And when I look at my career, I can sort of look at you as well, and you must be extremely proud to have achieved what you've done and to be able to sit here and say, well, I actually still want to come to work. And that's the sort of way I feel. So thank you very much for taking the time out from your day to have a chat to us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our second interview is between Tim and Stephen Scanlan, who works at the Slabcaster in Port Kembla. He reflects on the technological changes to which he has adapted over the years and explains why he has no plans to slow down.
My current role as caster operator is to cast steel into plate or strip slabs, dispatch them out through the machine. Involves being on a casting floor and treating hot metal and then processing it down through the machines. My other role in the pulpit is dispatching those cut hot slabs out onto wagons or through a cooling system and through to the mills.
Tell us about your career here at BlueScope. When it all began, how long have you been here, and what other roles have you sort of participated in?
I've been here for nearly 46 years, 47 years next April. I started off in the old number 1 works at the rail bank merchant mill. After about 4.5 years, I transferred over here when they shut that area down, and then started off in the pulpit area downstairs, 8-hour shifts, and then slowly progressed through the system, multi-skilled training, into doing more roles, and that's where I am today.
Of all the expertise that you sort of have, it must be so good for others to tap into. What are you often called upon to advise on within your job, and what do people go to you for first?
There's been a lot of changes in this department, a lot of technological changes, a lot of computer changes that I've grown up with and that I possibly understand better than some new people. There's a lot of changes that constantly go on because we're not all familiar or trained in all areas and facets of the operation. Some of my skills come in handy when other people don't know.
Probably touched on it just a little bit there, but in your time here, a lot of things have changed over time. What's one thing that really stands out most to you as a change?
The computerisation, the automation of the area. So a lot less people, but still producing the same amount of products in a better way, cleaner way.
What's been the draw card for you to be here for 47 years?
A stable employment, a reliable income. The company's changed a lot over the years. It's become a safer place, a better environment to work. It's quite enjoyable.
Do you have any career highlights, or is there one thing that really stands out to you that's happened within your career?
No, not really. It's just been a progressive change all the way through. It's been nothing drastic, just a progressive change, learning new skills.
What do you make of the younger generation that have come through after you, that are learning and starting to come in fresh today and still learning off you as well?
They've got a better idea of the technology that is available today. So we had to learn through trial and error. They already know all that technology or those computer skills a lot more than what, say, I would. But then they've got the experienced operators that guide them, and that helps them. So they're a lot better off than what, say, we were back then.
So would you say that after 47 years here, you still can learn today?
Absolutely, learning every day, something new, something different, something I haven't seen before. Yeah, we learn off each other. Something that other shifts have experienced gets passed on to us, or something from my own shift. Individual operators that have experienced different things, and because we work as a team, yeah, we all learn off each other, and we're constantly learning because things are constantly changing.
Lastly, what gets you out of bed every morning? What gets you out of bed and say, I'm going back there again to BlueScope to do my job?
It gives me a sense of purpose. It gives me a reason to get up, and I enjoy coming to work. It's not a hardship. It's something that I enjoy doing. For me, that's what gets me out. That's what keeps me coming.
Awesome, I love it. So thank you very much.
No worries.
Good on you.
Now let's hear from Gino, Milan, Bob Prince and Xavier Garcia, who share 136 years of experience at our Port Kembla Steelworks. They discuss their respective careers and long-term collaboration.
I'm Bob Prince. I've been here in the works for 46 years coming up this February. My current role is I'm the Senior Mechanical Engineer within the Energy Services Department. Energy Services covers supply of services as it suggests, but also some critical processes within the works. We supply coal blast to the blast furnaces for iron making. We supply air to the cryogenic plant for oxy making, for steel making. We take care of high voltage electric power around the whole works, water, gas, compressed air services. So we cover the whole of the works basically. My particular role as a senior mechanical engineer is both support to operations and maintenance for major shutdowns, for instance, where we give our engineering support in design up front for particular needs during a maintenance shutdown, but also we get involved with engineering projects for improvement, development of the department and I guess what you'd call sustainability of the plant that we look after. So these guys next to me belong to the process control section within Energy Services Department, and I'll introduce Gino Milan and Xavier Garcia, and they can tell you a bit about themselves.
I'm Gino Milan. I've been here 38 years. in the automation, senior automation for energy services, plant-based. I've worked with these two fellas for a good part of, I'd say at least half of that. Right, and it's been fantastic to work with them. Yeah, I've enjoyed the time here so far. I'll pass on to Xavier.
Yep, so my name is Xavier Garcia. I've got a first name, Francis. I don't know if you knew. So everyone knows me as Xavier. I started in 72 as electrical fitter mechanic. I guess coming up in January next year, it'll be 53 years I'll be here. Yeah, I'm a process control engineer working with these fellas, as Gino said, for a very, very long time, 40 plus years, I suspect, at this stage. I'm not sure what else I can say other than, I've had a ball. I'm still having one.
What other roles have you had in your time here at BlueScope, and then we'll pass around the table?
When you say roles, I started as electrical fitter mechanic, went over to gas control when it used to be at number 1 works as an apprentice, and then I got to become an instrument fitter, as they mentioned in those days. Then the superintendent back then was a guy called Dave Baird. He asked me if I wanted to become a leading hand at number 2 blower station. I never heard of number 2 blower station. I said, yeah, that'll do. So I came over to the blower station, and that's where I've stayed since. That was about 1982, I think. Although I did work at number 1 powerhouse, the blast furnaces, 1, 2 and 3 blast furnaces. So that goes back a while, and the merchant mills and that sort of thing over at number 1 works. And then ever since, I've been at the number 2 blower station energy services.
Well,
I started as an engineering cadet back in 1979. That year's intake, there was about 40 of us all up in that year. Part of our training was to move around to different departments to experience different parts of the works. So after the training shop at Steelhaven, I spent the first 10 months actually at number 2 blower station, and was introduced to what was then the power department. We've had a few name changes over time. We're now energy services. At one time we were called utilities department. After the blower station, I went to the old electric steel plant, which people will now know as the Haas plant, I think, where they do some raw materials recycling over there. Spent about 8 months up at the tin mill in the coal mill and cleaning and annealing section, and then went for a stint up at the engineering building with the capital development department. That brought us to the end of my 4th year, which was 82, 83, when we had the big shutdown, and we went from about 22,000 employees down to about half that number within a couple of months. As an engineering cadet, I was kept on and was able to finish my degree doing full-time study. But out of the 40, we were reduced to about half a dozen, I think. So all of the certificate guys that finished up that year were part of the layoff. So luckily I was kept on. At the end of my 6 years uni course, I was offered to come back to either what was then still the power department or up to the strip mill. I guess I selected the devil I knew and came back to the blower station, and have been there ever since.
Yeah, I started back in 1986 as a graduate. Already graduated, so I wasn't a cadet or anything. I started off in the iron making technology group at the coke ovens. Very interesting place, the coke ovens. There was rolling strikes back then as well, so I got to go on to the plant. And one of my jobs was during the strikes was at Lisbon, which was quite interesting, from the office to the plant itself. And there's gas, there's dirt, there's bit grimy, things that would pop when you lift the lids, little explosions here and there. So that was all part of it, and that made me realise office is one thing, but there's energy with the plant. So that was a good introduction for me. We did a few things there which was quite interesting, and it made me think in our processes, sometimes there are little things that we can do that can be significant. And a simple example was they used to measure the temperature. There's a reversal that takes 30 minutes, and the temperature decays pretty rapidly initially and then slower later. We changed the timing from when we took the temperature at 5 minutes to, say, 15 minutes. And that made things much more steady in terms of the temperature measurements and then the gas changes that they would make accordingly. That was a simple thing. I thought, wow, hey, there must be plenty of opportunity in this place to make improvements. So that's just one example anyway. From the coke ovens, I then actually went to the blast furnace number 5, the reline in 1991, and I actually went on shift for a year. So that was 7-day shift work. That was exciting too, very exciting. Besides being the technical person doing the feed, the burdens and all that sort of stuff in the control room, I got a stint 3 months as on the floor, operational floor. That was great because you get to play with the remote controls and put in the mud gun and pull out the pre-bar and all that sort of stuff. And there's also another appreciation of when things go, the energy in the place. If you miss a gun up, you see these sparks hit the back of the wall. Back then there was no covers on the trows, so things were open. You go from the office, the technical stuff, to, hey, just realise that there is actually a plant and a lot of energy behind what we do. All right, so that was good. From there, I joined engineering, came back through engineering on the number 5 reline back in 91. So we joined the automation process control, it was called, back up at the Sirius building. It was an engineering building back then. And we had a good bunch of people there as well. On the reline, worked with people like Jay Roster-Roller, Brian Scott, Mark Ryman, all the furnace type people. They were fantastic. And also Terry Payton and a few others. But after that, I went from central engineering, so to speak, or automation process control. Then we changed to central engineering group. As part of that, I was looking after systems. There was a system here that we had, it was called Bailey. It's an ABB product now. And we had that here at Energy Services. We had that at the cryogenic plant, and we had that at the Cinder plant. So I used to go around doing a bit of the code and stuff on those different plants. Then we joined Energy Services and sort of went to the cryogenic plant. So I spent a bit of time at the cryogenic plant with people like Reg Brown and Paul Price. That's how I got the flavour a bit more of Energy Services. But I also spent a bit of time with Xavier when I was up at the control, riding that 23 turbo blower FDS. And that was a complete eye-opener for me, right? So Xavier had the experience, and so we're writing these technical specs, and he was talking these languages, and I'm going, what are you saying? Control output track, PV track. I don't even know what he's talking about. It was a different language. But slowly but surely, got to understand it, and his knowledge of the process, we could write it on paper and how to control the turbo blower. Took that knowledge, that was a great learning for me, right, Xavier, just to let you know. And the importance of writing specs, right? The importance of writing specs. You'll get what you write or what you know. If you don't write it down, that means you don't really know it. So if you can write it down, that shows that you know what you're doing. And then from there, we were central engineering under Brian Scott, and then we went to plant-based engineering, and that's where I started then going to Energy Services. And that's where I am now, automation, so in Energy Services.
A lot of experience from the three of you. Can you summarise one thing that maybe you're often called upon to lend a hand with? What's something out of all your expertise that you have that someone might come up and say, oh, I know you'll know this, or can you help us with this?
We help each other out. We apply a multidisciplinary approach to problems that arise. We rely on each other because not any one of us carries all the knowledge. People come up with a problem. If I don't know, have an answer for it, I refer to Bob or Gino or anyone else. History, I guess, is an important part of it all. You know, we get challenged each day to say, well, this is what's out there today. Why is it like that? And out of that, I mean, with probably questions that we get asked that we haven't asked ourselves before, and that enhances our own knowledge and provides us with an opportunity to improve what's been out there, because there's always room for improvement in anything you do. Someone will find an improvement opportunity.
Yeah, it's hard to pick just one thing.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's because I mean that's important too. I mean, there's been a lot of things that blow up, and we've had experience that things do go wrong, and sometimes young engineers come through, and maybe they're not aware of these potentials. And I guess that's where we come in a little bit to say, well, by the way, you know, following a process is important, because if we don't, the likelihood is that things can go wrong, and it has an impact across the whole spectrum of, you know, people and machinery.
Our history in the place and our experiences over that time are what people basically ask for or rely on. The nature of our plant is, particularly with the big turbo machines, is you don't get to play with them right into their guts very often, and it's a case of, if you don't keep a good record of what you did this time, in 10 years' time when you get back into that same sort of work, if you've lost that record, then you're sort of fishing in the dark at times. So that's one of the things, I guess, that we get relied on is, what did you do 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Bob, after being here for so many years and you're coming into the same job, what's a draw card to keep bringing you back that stands today?
First and foremost, the people I work with. That's the big attraction. We've got a great team that we work with. As Xavier will suggest, this is his sandbox, his playground. He enjoys coming to work because of the experience of sharing things with people, working with people. The other aspect is within our department and the steelworks in general is the exposure to the broadness of the type of plant, the processes, etc. Something different every day. That's what keeps me coming back.
And much the same as what Bob said, I mean, yeah, the people you work with, how can I put it? Like Bob said, the sandpit, well, yes, most of the pressure I get is to get into that sandpit and work out which machinery or what toy I'm going to play with, because there's that many toys out there. It keeps you young, and the other thing is, I guess, the fact that I've been here a long time too, you get to now catch up with a lot of younger people, especially when you get to my age. I mean, I'm 70 years of age, so by the time younger people come through, they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, that gives me life, that keeps me young. And they're happy to contribute to the things that I can learn from them. They learn from me, and that sharing, and I mean, that's just, yeah, fantastic. I mean, yeah, no, I love it. I really enjoy it. It gives you a bit of purpose, and I do sometimes say, you know, it's when I was thinking about retiring, I looked around and did a bit of research on men's sheds out in the Illawarra, and put them all together, all the attributes that are associated with it, and BlueScope ticked all the boxes. And I'm thinking, well, why would I want to leave here and go to a men's shed outside when I've got all the toys and the great people that I work with and what have you? I mean...
and you get a bit of pocket money there.
Yeah, you get a bit of pocket money from time to time. I say, Xavier, you've been overdoing it a little bit. Go and have a holiday, will you?
What about you, Gino? What brings you back?
It's very much, it's already been said. It's the people, right? And like you said, we've known each other for a long time, and you spend a lot of time at work, right? As much as you want to say, you spend the good 8 hours for 5 days a week at work. So you get to know the people, and when you find a good bunch of people, it's very hard to leave that bunch. We work well together. And we also have a sense of humour. You need to maintain a sense of humour. Everything can't be too serious all the time, right? As much as the energy's out there and you've got to be careful, we do that, but you also have fun while we're doing it. So that's the people.
Last question, and we'll get you all to answer to wrap up. You'd have many career highlights and everything, but what's one thing you're most proud of?
It's a difficult one because it's a choice between things like, let's call it like project success, where we've done some difficult projects or we've pulled machines out of disaster back into production, but... Above that, I think my most proud achievement, is that there have been a number of guys that I've brought from sort of raw-faced engineers into, I hope, seasoned engineers through passing on my experience and giving them a bit of guidance and seeing them, go to roles mostly outside of BlueScope where they've become well-respected and very competent engineers. That gives me a good feeling that I've had a little bit to do with where they've got to.
Yeah, again, it's a hard one. So I'm just going to go back to forget the projects. We've had some funny and interesting projects. We even got locked out at III, remember? Yep. We stayed back one night. They locked the gates on us. We couldn't get out of the building. All right? That's how late we were working. But that's just the project, right? If you ask me, it's developing a team of new engineers or whatever's coming along in a harmonic way where they don't feel overpressured, they can relax, they can enjoy, and you can get the best out of them. And that's a very subtle sort of thing that I'm saying, but that I think is probably one of the things I'm proud of, right? So that we've had a good team that works here, right? And I really think that's what I would say for me.
Yeah, like you said, it's a tough one. I mean, yeah, I've always been a knowledge sharer, so my background's Spanish, so I love the banter, the talking, even though I'm a bit funny here. Because, I mean, when I started here in 72, not many people wanted to share their knowledge because it was job security, if you can believe it, but that was the reality. And I found that, that was a terrible attribute, So from that point of view, I found that, knowledge sharing was something that's given me a lot of pleasure, and it's still giving me a lot of pleasure.
And that's one key ingredient. That's a key.
Told me you were Spanish.
Yeah, very funny. Very funny. But anyway, I can tell you a funny story. When I first started in 72, on the first day as an apprentice, I got sent home. That was the start of my career. The supervisor there, go and see the master, what do they call him? The
Master apprentices.
Master apprentices.
Yeah.
And I went in there and he looked at me and he says, well, he says, you're not starting today. And I just stood there. He says, you're going to have to get yourself a haircut. Okay, I was in a band back in those days. So my hair was halfway down my back. So I went out, cut 12 inches off, or 300 mils, and I wasn't metricated back then. cut 12 inches off, came back, and I said, how's that? He goes, not enough. He says, and don't bother coming back today, you can start next Monday. So I cut another 6 inches off, another 150 mils. That's 450 mil I had to cut off, which was killing me because being in a band, the guitars and what have you, it was killing me, cutting all this hair that I grew over the years.
Didn't go with the era.
So that was the start of my career in 1972. But the funny part about it is that on my 50th year that I was here, got a call from Mark Vasella, Harry Murphy, I think, set it all up. And he gave us a call from America. I think he was in America at the time, to congratulate me for the 50 years that I was here for. And I told him that story. And the funny part about it, he said, well, probably today we wouldn't be able to do that, I should imagine, because it'd be discrimination.
There you go.
But anyway, so yeah, that's just a way of saying, yeah, 1972, things have changed a lot.
We'd like a couple of photos of that, if you've got any photos.
I'll be with it.
He looked like a young Carlos Santana when he was young.
Oh, no.
Could you play as well? Eh? Could you play as well on the guitar?
Yeah, no, well, of course I did, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, it's a very different culture. I mean, what Gino was saying and that, yeah, I mean, safety-wise, yes, it's incredible.
It changes, yeah.
Next up is Marvin Hicks, who tells his story at our Lysart site in Emu Plains. Marvin explains the importance of customer experience and shares how he balanced his work at the company with his passion for rugby league, having played with the Penrith Panthers.
G'day, Marvin Hicks is my name. I'm currently an account manager at Lysart at Emu Plain. Basically, I'm dealing with resellers and in a category of a gold reseller, and they are situated throughout Sydney. So basically, they're our resellers of all our products, ranging from roofing and walling into structural products. So these guys order our product, we deliver into their store, and then they would re-deliver them out to their customers. So it keeps it nice and flowing through the channels.
Beautiful. You've been with BlueScope for a long time, Marvin. Tell us just how long, when it all began for you, and maybe some of the roles that you've had in that time as well.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm celebrating my 47th year at Lysart today, the 14th of November. And basically, I started in November 1977. I'd finished school and I needed to get a job to earn some money. So a mate of mine, we started at the Anzac Street facility at Chullora, just basically as utilities. After a little while in January, I actually got my results of the HSC and thought I'd better get a job. So in February the following year, a sales job come up with then Lysart Brownwood Industries, and I started there, it was about February in 78.
Beautiful. Tell us about your time here. You would have noticed many changes over your time. Is there anything that in particular, as far as changes, that have stood out for you since you started?
Well, the obviously changes technology with computers and also just technology within the product as well. When I started, it would be a long sheet of colour bond. We could do up to 15 metres. Now we've got the facilities to roll up to and deliver up to 40 metres. So it varies from, the product that we actually produce to how we put things in the system, the technology, computerised systems, how we roll our product now, down to even the type of people that we employ. So I've seen many changes, I've seen many managers, but all good along the way.
With a long duration will come a lot of expertise for you. Is there one particular thing that stands out for you that people come and say, hey, Marvin, can you help me with this, or can you tell me about this? Or
it actually varies into what the questions my customers asked. The obvious question is product knowledge. Sometimes I can answer that off the top of my head, or I can refer them to find the answers, etc. I also get asked just basically in my sales techniques, what I believe in, how I talk to customers, how I deal with customers. Generally, I work in conjunction with them, whether it be me calling with them on their customers or just coming up with solutions even within their businesses themselves. So a lot of these businesses that I deal with started off as, the owner. He took the orders, virtually did everything, to now some of these bigger companies actually are some of our biggest customers. And in fact, they've been around that long now, whereas before I used to deal with the fathers. Now I deal with the sons who have taken over the business, which is really good, because I could see the progression with the company and how it grows. And I get a lot of joy out of seeing my customers from where they started to where they are now, and how they've grown into these bigger businesses and consequently bigger customers of Lysart's.
47 years is a long time to be involved in the same company. What's the draw card for you? What brings you back every day to your job?
Well, it's a cliche, but it is the people. So not only the people that I work with, but my customers. But over the years, I've had a lot of different situations where the company has actually supported me. Some people know that when I was started with a company, and I played rugby league. So I've actually played rugby league for Penrith back in the early 80s. And there's a couple of times there where I actually were injured. I broke the jaw twice, and the company supported me. So, and I believe because the company supported me, I've always supported the company. They've always done the right thing by me. So that's where it sits. I do the right thing by them, and I enjoy every minute of it. And that's what gets me out of bed, every morning, because I'm generally doing something different. I'm talking to people that I over the years have become, good friends with.
As far as a career highlight for you, it's hard to put your finger on one thing, I'm sure, over 47 years. Is there something that stands out for you that really makes you proud?
It's hard to pinpoint, but I guess, as I mentioned before, some of these businesses that were started out as one-man bands have become now employing, 20, 30 people. So that always sticks out in my mind. What sticks out in my mind also is some of the projects that we've been involved in along the way. Some like, Darling Harbour, where at the time, one of my customers, Chadwick Industries, they roofed all of Darling Harbour. I've had customers that did the football stadium. So along the way, there's different projects that stand out, even coming up now with new projects along the line where my current customers are involved in that as well.
I knew about the Panthers thing already. So tell us about your footy days playing football, but obviously back then you had to work, didn't you? Yeah,
well, that's correct. So there was no such thing as professional, footballs, that full-time, football players. I would train Tuesdays and Thursday nights and Friday night. And when I first started out as a sales rep, I actually did the Northern Beaches area. So from where I lived out at southwestern Sydney, had to drive over to the Northern Beaches, especially on a Tuesday or Thursday. Then I'd have to drive all the way back to Penrith, train, and then we'd go the next day. So I had to, combine not only my business with Lysart's, and then my personal hobby, so one of a better term, playing rugby league. And the company supported me all the way.
Is there one comparison you can make between being a first grade rugby league player and your job? Is there one thing that sort of overarches that you find similar?
Yeah, I think it's like anything. You've got to prepare. So one thing that as a rugby league player, you've got to prepare yourself. So at game time comes, you're prepared. Likewise within business here, as a sales rep, you've got to prepare yourself for your meetings and your calls with your customers. So one thing that I've always said to my customers is that I'll always tell them the truth. You know, even if it's the wrong truth, I'll tell them the truth. Likewise with playing rugby league. If you're true to yourself, you'll come out a winner.
Perfect. Anything else you would like to add?
No, it's just an honour. It's always been an honour to work with Lysards. People ask, you know, I'm 65 next year, when am I going to retire? Well, I haven't even thought about it yet, to be quite honest.
Our last interview is a group discussion with Port Kembla employees Michael Churches and John Ziegelaar, who speak with Craig about some of the major changes that have occurred in manufacturing operations over the last few decades and the benefits of a more diverse, multi-generational workforce.
Michael and John, I'm just interested in finding out a little bit about your careers. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing there might be some overlap between you ended up working together and how you started, where you came from, and pretty much what's kept you coming here all this time. So I don't know, Michael, you've been here longest. Do you want to start? How did you first come here and what made you first come here?
So I came to work with Australian United Steel straight out of school. I came as a trainee electrical engineer. One of the things that was interesting is I was asked 2 specific questions during my interview before I was accepted. First question was, how long do you think you might want to work here? And my answer to that was, as long as I feel that it continues to give me a challenge. And I have to say, I'm still getting challenges to this day, and I'm still here. The other question was a little bit more subtle because I had an interest in environmental protection. And they said, how could you reconcile that interest with working with a company that has a reputation for being dirty and smelly and generally not environmentally friendly? I said, well, perhaps in some stage I might be in a position where I can do something about it. A typical teenager, smart aleck answer. Well, I have been in a position and I have done things to contribute towards improving our environmental response. And the other thing was, it was interesting, the Steelworks job at that stage was regarded by both management and people as a job for life. That's changed a lot in the last 50 years, but I'm still here.
Yeah, and I must admit I had that same experience. Not that I was going to change the world or anything, but that I came thinking that people start working here and they actually stay for life, right? And I had that same, I guess, expectation. I'm not knowing whether I ever would, but what about you, John? Did you feel the same way?
Similar sort of, straight out of school, went to the number 1 machine shop, cadet, filed blocks of steel and stuff and drilled holes and then moved around and lots of different places. And I think with Michael and I probably had some crossover in various areas, the old number 1 works area, and spent most of my career here at the strip mill. So, and I guess like Michael as well, that if you try to explain to someone outside the company that you've been in the one spot for 40 plus years, they think, what's wrong with you? But it's a really interesting place full of challenges that every day, yesterday, today, tomorrow, it's full of challenges, interest, and good people to work with. So that's what keeps me coming back.
Yeah. And once again, that's been my experience as well. But you mentioned number 1 works. So you were at number 1 works as well.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like? And I guess, what was it like compared to what it's like working at the hot strip mill now? And I should explain, if people are listening, that number 1 works was where the original steelworks started. So since now is not operational, everything's been moved over the road to what we call number 2 works. But
yes. Okay, number 1 works, an interesting place. I started my employment here in the electrical apprentice training shop. My first appointment outside that was in number 1 works. It was at the 36-inch mill, which rolled rails and similar materials. They had a bloom mill in front of it. There was a 3 stands side-by-side 36-inch mill, and the bloom would come in and it'd be rolled a couple of times and then backwards and forwards and then backwards and forwards, and out would come 300 or more feet of rail that was then cut up and drilled and so on necessary. It was a scary place. particularly the 36-inch mill, where the mill operators were standing on the mill floor with red-hot steel coming down one side, going past them and coming across and then going the other side of them. If they weren't really agile on their feet, they would get clobbered by a piece of red-hot steel. That would have been really horrible. The attitudes to safety in those days were completely different to what we have now. We have much more stringent safety rules, but our accident rate has dropped dramatically.
Yeah.
And just looking over the years, in my experience, there are things that we used to do in those days that we would not do now. We wouldn't even consider it.
Not acceptable.
One job I had was doing crane maintenance from time to time, crane breakdowns. I had to carry my tool bag up onto a crane gantry that was that wide. The cranes had that much space between them when they were passing on the two sides. It was the only access for a broken down crane. If the crane was parked in a bay where the operator could get out, that was okay. You could go up the stairs and cross the platform onto the crane. Otherwise, you had to walk along this gantry. If a crane comes one way, you've got to dodge it. If the crane comes the other way, you've got to dodge it. And if they're both together, you'd better be on one of them or the other one before you get knocked off altogether. If the wind was blowing from the wrong direction, then it was a fairly solid drop to the ground. So you had to be careful you didn't get blown off. No way we would do that now.
Yeah.
But in those days, that was accepted practice.
Yeah. You got examples like that, John? I could see you smiling. And
yeah, so I worked in a couple of places. I worked in No. 1 power station. So that was a really hot, noisy place. Salt tablets and that sort of stuff in summer and things like that. And then had another stint in the billet mill, so right next door to the rail mill. And in those days, with that many people, you had plenty of opportunity once you've done your job in the morning, changing chucks on the billet mill work roll assemblies. You had a bit of free time to say, we'll go for a wander. So you'd wander around past the rail mill and see sparks flying off the shear. Well, crikey, that's a bit interesting. And then go for a walk through the merchant mills, watch every now and then they'd have a cobble or the bar would be flying around the returns to come back through the stands. So you'd watch that happen, and then through the foundry and places like that. So, lots of interesting places. And, you see the connection to history about, the No. 1 power station. You see in some of the 100-year-old photos, you see the No. 1 power station with the cricket game out the front. So you sort of go, I worked in that spot. Yeah, the billet mill, there's nothing much left there now except for the old Galloway steam engine. But
well, that was going to be my next question, actually. I was going to ask if either of you had anything to do with the Galloway steam engine at all.
I did wash my clothes around the back of the Galloway steam engine, because in those days, you'd sort of, as a young fella, you'd sort of get pretty grotty and you'd throw your clothes into a tub, a bit of detergent, and then turn the steam on to wash your clothes, and it would sort of agitate your clothes. But you turn the steam on for too long, and all your little buttons disappear. It's like, bugger.
Really?
So, that was a bit of a learning, but I did work around the Galloway steam engine and people working in there and the big crankshafts and stuff like that. But, I sort of worked with the fitters who worked on it kind of thing. So.
And sorry, before you go, so my background is a LISART trainee, right? So I spent my time at Spring Hill and CRM, and I did much the same sort of thing. If I wasn't busy at one time, I used to go for a walk around just to look at things because the place was fascinating, right? Yeah. It wasn't the red hot metal that you would have been seeing at the Bloom Mill and things like that. Yeah. But I used to do that regularly. Just I think if I'll go for a walk, and you used to be able to, right? You used to be able to walk up to the roof.
Could wander anywhere and everywhere, and some of it you probably shouldn't have gone to those places. But wandering around, looking at things, learning things, seeing what's happening. Yeah, that was very interesting.
That was an important part of the job in one way, of seeing how the plant runs, what it's doing and why it's doing it and that sort of thing. It's a real good learning experience. I used to like watching the Galloway engine just running, and the engine driver would be up in his little, and he'd be throwing the lever over to make it go one way, and then the mill had to go the other way, so he'd be throwing the lever back again. And Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, one thing about steam is that even if the bar stalled in the mill, the steam would just build up and then it would take it.
Yes.
It's not like an electric motor that once it stalled, it stalled. This thing would just build up a head of steam and it would go, yep, I'm going.
Yeah. So the other thing about Number One Works is I lived for a long time in Mount St Thomas, and on a calm night you could hear Number One Works running. You could hear the flying shear on the billet mill go, whoomph, whoomph, and you could hear the steam whistle on the change of shift, quite clearly coming across the flats towards Mount St Thomas.
Yeah, this would have been the time when we were making iron and steel and Number Two Works as well. So, so you're saying in between that you could hear Number One Works,
You can still hear Number One Works going in those days.
Maybe we can fast forward to you both now working in hot mills, the hot strip mill in particular.
Yes.
So that's got a history of its own, right? So that would have been operating before you both started, and and now it's been modernised quite a few times, I guess.
Yeah.
What's been the sort of thing that's brought you over to the hot strip mill and kept you here? Any experiences from when you first came here to what it is like now?
Yeah, so I came here in 1985, finished uni, I came here, and that was a very interesting time because that was just on the eve of the biggest development that the strip mill had done in, ever since it started. So the pre-1985, the mill was still running in its original 1955 configuration with lots of people, and operation was very manual, old pusher furnaces, broadside mills and all that sort of stuff. 85 was when we did the major upgrade. So the new roughing mill, the new reheat furnaces, furnace one, and then all the equipment on the finishing mill, and a fair bit of equipment in the coilers and coil handling. So that was all redone as well. So lots of money, lots of equipment, lots of work. We were a group of people at that time that came in to commission the equipment from an operations point of view, and also train the operators how to use the new equipment. So it all upgraded from manual to PLC controlled, and then the first iteration of the computer control that people like Michael and others worked on. So, yeah, very interesting time. It set the company up for where we are today. It's extremely fortunate that we did that major upgrade. So that's going almost 40 years ago now. But
okay. Would it be fair to say too, and maybe Michael, you might have a comment, that despite the major upgrades, we still are always fine-tuning the thing, making it safer, more efficient, better from an environment point of view?
I came to the hot strip mill in 1989, which is after the major upgrade. I'd been involved in an upgrade at the 5-stand cold mill, which is known as the tin mill.
Oh, not the one at Spring Hill.
The one at Spring Hill. Yeah. That one that doesn't exist anymore. Yes. A lot of the jobs I worked on in the early parts of my career don't exist anymore. That plant has been completely demolished, which is rather demoralising in a way. It's a bit of a shock. I was hoping my legacy would last a bit longer than that.
But you're talking primarily the tin plate area?
Well, Number One Works, tin plate area, Number Two open hearth.
Okay.
So there are a lot of different areas that I've worked over my time, and most of those don't exist anymore. And I even did upgrade work at O'Brien's Drift at one stage, which is the coal conveyor feeding coal down to the bottom of the escarpment for railing into the plant. That's not there anymore. The conveyor's been demolished and so on and so forth. So anyway, the hot strip mill, on the aftermath of that major upgrade, I was then doing basically support work. Following on from that, I joined the computer team somewhat later, sometime in the mid-90s. And that was supported by my background on the computer work at the cold mill. And so then from there, we were involved in a second upgrade of the computer system in 2002. Extra equipment that was installed on the mill in 2003. Another computer upgrade was done in-house, guessing sometime about 2010 or thereabouts. And we're now planning for another major computer upgrade in the next 5 years. So from that point of view, yes, it's continuous, but I've been continuously involved as well in doing not just support work, but development. And I think that answers your question, that do we just do an upgrade and then sit back and watch it work? No, we're continuing to tweak it. We're continuing to improve our performance. So as an example, we put a second furnace in the hot strip mill in 2006. Theoretically, it was going to double our capacity. Now, it was never going to double the capacity, except that, in fact, it has doubled our capacity. We've been continually tweaking the furnace control in terms of its performance and everything related to the mill to improve throughput. And so in preparation for our next upgrade, one of my colleagues and I sat down and we started looking at all the data that we'd collected since 2000 about mill performance, tonnes, quality, delays, so on and so forth. And in every measure, we have improved dramatically in that last 20 years, 20 to 25 years. It's just incredible how much has gone there. And a lot of that, I think, has been the fact that we have a lot of clever people. We're not individuals. We're not individually responsible for this. We work as part of a team. And there are people out there who know what needs to be done. And we've been given the freedom as a team to get in there within constraints of money, which is always an issue, but to actually go there and do what we know needs to be done. And those improvements have come as a result of that effort.
No, this is fabulous, what you're saying, and I can sort of really relate to what you said a minute ago, John, about the fact that this is a unit that's really set up our company to be what we are, right?
Yeah.
And that's that downstream producer of sheet.
So we do feel that pressure, that to some degree, that we're the sole way that the company can convert iron ore through the blast furnace, through the BOS caster. The only way we can get that into Colorbond downstream is via this mill.
Has to come through this.
It has to come through here.
We've got multiple metal coating lines and paint lines, but this is it.
Hot strip mill.
That sort of sits in our mind pretty much daily. We understand that it's critical that we keep this place running for now and the future.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you personally, look, you've been here a long time and each of you might want to have a think about this. It might be a tricky thing to answer, but you've been here a long time. Is there something about either of you that means that people will come to you and ask for advice about a certain thing, or, do you have a certain expertise that we're going to miss when one day you're suddenly not here any longer? Or?
Yes.
So John's saying in Michael's case, yes.
Yes, we have a fear of how we're going to keep going with Michael. Doesn't keep turning up in January. But look, I think from my perspective, we've seen a lot of change. Like the mill has had a lot of people go through it over a lot of years. So when I started in 85, we had a large contingent of people who had been here, some of them from the day the mill started. And you get generational change in places. And there's always been comments that when this group of people leave, the whole place will fall apart. And it doesn't.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's a lot of smart people coming behind you. And the other thing that Michael in particular, and I'm trying to emulate Michael's approach, is that we are really trying to become a learning organisation. So we do a lot of work with storing knowledge and information and solutions to problems and information about how to do things. So Michael, for the last 5 to 10 years, has spent a huge effort on doing that. And I've tried to emulate that from my side of things as well, to document, to understand, to share information, to make it available. And you've got very bright people coming behind us who are excellent at data extraction of information.
Yep.
So, short story is, we'll miss people like Michael for sure, but I think we're still setting the place up in a good way.
So you mentioned legacy before, Michael. I mean, do you feel like that's got a legacy that you're going to leave behind?
Yeah, so I've been thinking going towards retirement, I've been thinking about my career, and I'm thinking about the people that I've worked with over that time. And I've got a list of names that's about 200 long of people that I can remember working with who have made some sort of influence on my life and my career, and people that I've been able to influence in their careers as well. The challenge is always people age. New people are always coming in at one end and leaving at the other. The challenge is to be able to encourage the young people to get out there with the youthful enthusiasm and idealism and energy from the wisdom of the older people. And if that's the one thing that we can do well, and I mentioned teamwork many times, I've been intentionally aiming to leave a legacy. It used to be that in the old days you kept tight of control over your knowledge. Nobody else was allowed to have access to that. That's not a good way to approach it. It's much better to share that knowledge out into the organisation, which then gets carried forward. So I'm aiming to leave a legacy, a foundation for future development, but also information about what we have now among the people that I'm working with. I'm sharing my knowledge, my experience, in the same way that other people have shared with me, so that that can be carried forward in the next generation, the people who will take over after me. I'm hoping that my legacy will last another 50 years. Not the memory of who I am, but the knowledge that I've embedded in the organisation will still be useful 50 years from now.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it's fantastic, I think, that you're conscious of it and you're doing it deliberately. It might have just happened naturally, but the fact that you're doing it deliberately, I think, is fantastic. And sorry, John, you were going to add something?
Yeah, it's been a very conscious thing on our part. I guess if you said what is one of my big legacies, I think one of my legacies is my involvement in developing the event system. And in the strip mill, we've now got 24 years of events. So over 1.5 million events full of information about problems and solutions and all that. And that's part of the information/knowledge that we rely on to understand how we do things. And it's not just the information itself or the knowledge that Michael puts into our Twiki pages and stuff. It's the approach to how we do things. So it's the learning organisation approach that we're trying to embed that will set the place up for the future.
Is there anything else either of you might want to add before we wrap it up? Or is there another reflection that you might have had or thought of?
When I first started working back in the 70s, people would say, what do you do for a job? Work at the steelworks, that must be a great job. Then during the big downturns in the 80s, there was one guy I remember that I'd be walking from home to the shops and I'd see him and he'd say, how are you going? You still working at the steelworks? Haven't they shafted you yet? I thought, that really made me feel uncomfortable because there was a really bad vibe I was getting from the community about steel in the midst of the Wollongong area. And yes, we've gone through some really tough times. They have been incredibly tough times. But I think that's drawn the team together even better. And particularly now that we're BlueScope, we're independent of the old BHP and some of the mindset that was involved in that. We're a new organisation, and I think I'm starting to get vibes from the community that's saying, hey, you are a benefit in this area, that you're contributing to the community in the sense that you've got these financial resources of all these employees working here who are doing their own community work. They're part of the place that we live.
It's come along leaps and bounds. Like for most of my career in the strip mill, we had no women. We had one woman operator for a few years. The strip mill's done a lot of good work with. We get a lot more women in now, so I can't even count how many women we've got now working in the strip mill workforce, and they do all the roles. They're operating in all the pulpits, and I find them very good. We just got one of them just gone up to shift team leader relief role. She's excellent in that role. So yeah, I see really good things, and I find it really refreshing, the different mindset from the women operators coming in. They're willing to learn, they listen, they want to do good things. And frankly, some of the older blokes are just stubborn and set in their ways. And it's much more refreshing to talk to the women and engage with them in the process. So, yeah.
So that's been a big change, but still some way to go, probably.
My view is, I think, massive change, and I think we're well on the way to getting a really good working environment. And I think the working environments here at the strip mill has been what's kept me here. I've not bothered to look anywhere else because, frankly, the strip mill's the best place to work.
Well, thank you very much. It's been really going back down memory lane.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
That fifth and final interview concludes this episode on MoMENtous and the value of long-term working experience. We thank all of our participants and our interviewers Craig Nealon and Tim Robinson. We also acknowledge David Crawford, who suggested that the MoMENtous campaign take place, and finally Anna DiGiorgio and Laura Towie, who were instrumental to its organisation and promotion across BlueScope in Australia. Please visit the links and show notes to learn more about what you just heard, and we thank you, as always, for joining us here at Voices of BlueScope. We look forward to having you again soon.